Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, the State of the Endpoint Resilience in 2020. We've had an overwhelming response to this event, and we're excited to spend the next hour with you and appreciate you taking time out of your day. A little about myself. So Ameer Karim here. I'm with Absolute. I run all of the product and product marketing and design teams here. It is my pleasure today to announce our guest speaker, Chris Sherman. Chris, would you like to tell a little about yourself?
Yeah, hey, Sherman. Thanks for having me today. Yeah, I'm a senior analyst at Forrester covering endpoint security and healthcare. And we've worked together on some trends research here. So I'm excited to talk through some of it.
Excellent. So we have 4 interesting topics for today. First, what are the top endpoint security trends? So Chris will walk us through what he's seeing in the industry. The next is what is endpoint resilience? I'm sure that's on everyone's mind. So I'll be going through that and going through some of our findings on the endpoint resilience report. Then I'll hand it over back to Chris to kind of talk about the remote work and how it's impacting endpoint security. And then we'll wrap it up with some Q&A. Chris, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Ameer. Yeah, so I will start out, by just talking about 5 of the high-level endpoint security product trends that we've seen here at Forrester over the past year. And these are all based on our interactions with clients, and through the ongoing endpoint security suite wave evaluation process, where we compare all the relevant long and short-term roadmaps of the vendors. So first up here, we've seen a clear trend towards buyers wanting to adopt more of the native OS security controls. And these are controls such as Microsoft BitLocker, Defender, Application Control, virtualization-based security, Firewall, an Apple Gatekeeper, File Vault, right? Just to name the major ones, but there's many others. And the fact that many threat prevention technologies like anti-malware, whitelisting, full disencryption, and host firewall, right? They're all pretty commoditized today across the third-party security vendor market. And Absolute actually has some of the most recent data that I've seen on Defender adoption. Just as an example, 34% of their install base is currently using Microsoft Defender for anti-malware. And, if you look at Microsoft's own data, which includes consumer, it's well over 50%. And most of the vendors in my 2019 Endpoint Security Suites wave, really see the writing on the wall and recognize the importance of managing and integrating with these commoditized features. And there's ample opportunity for them to manage, those features, given, the fact that OS vendors have historically been pretty weak when it comes to, some of the more advanced management capabilities that an enterprise would want, right, in their own OS security features. And, it's still true that third-party security suites still do provide, the broadest array of security features and will remain at the forefront of the space for, the near future. But, for firms with more modest security budgets, analyzing where native security features provide sufficient protection has been a common strategy to bolster the organization's, security posture without over-investing in unnecessary layers of protection. And second, it's often the case that when you buy an endpoint security product, you're going to make trade-offs, right, when it comes to features across different OSs. Many products today are very Windows dominant, offering little to no protection for Apple, Linux, or mobile products, for example. But this has begun to rapidly change in the past 2 years. And based on the roadmaps, of many of the major vendors presented to me during the wave, there'll be strong feature parity this year when it comes to some of the more advanced forms of protection like EDR, automatic behavioral protection, data security, and others, right, across vendors like Apple and Linux. Mobile will still somewhat be separate for the next year for many of the vendors that I'm tracking, but the XDR trends that a lot of people are talking about now is really pushing mobile to be increasingly part of the mix. Right, and third, we're seeing better correlation between user and application behavior within endpoint security products, just in general. While every firm still depends on threat blocking and prevention mechanisms as that first layer of defense, more advanced threats are easily circumventing traditional defenses. Right, this is nothing new. Threat actors have had success with phishing. Right, that's a big one these days. Exploits. Fileless attacks, and many others, and they're cashing in on ransomware and crypto mining. Some top types of malware that we're seeing, right? And just considering that most attacks today involve a user and their interaction with applications, vendors have recognized the need to improve their analysis that includes user behavior. Several endpoint security suite vendors have ongoing efforts to correlate and analyze behavioral data generated by the device hardware, user, and apps, right? But a few are focused on extending this visibility and analysis over non-endpoint resources like email, cloud, and network behavior, right? Again, this gets back to XDR, right? It's a big part of the evolution that we're seeing on the analytics front. And ultimately, this is going to benefit buyers by reducing the false positive rate, which I'll talk a little bit more in a subsequent slide. And it also will help benefit by increasing precision around automated response. That's really key. And this is also related to the fourth trend here, the continued merger between prevention and detection. Endpoint security suites have had threat detection features since the early 2000s, right? Features such as HIPs, anti-exploit, behavioral protection capabilities, and other runtime process-oriented, protection measures. But several vendors in the market began life as a pure play EDR, or maybe before that more in the forensics market, right, where action was only taken after a compromise occurred and was missed by the prevention layer. The point is very separate from prevention. And the drawback is, that experienced SOC analysts must review the analysis before action can be taken, outside of a simple device quarantine. And now, that most of these tools have improved their precision to the point where, automatic remediation can occur based on detected behaviors before it leads to a compromise. These analysis engines are greatly extending the prevention capabilities offered in the market today. In fact, every single vendor in my ESS wave is combining their threat prevention with EDR for more closed loop threat prevention, detection, and response. And over the next year, we should expect, just improved analysis and visibility into users, device, and network behavior, which will in correlations between the three, right? Which will ultimately increase the efficacy of all of these solutions. And then finally, the last high-level trend that I want to point out here of 2020 is the emergence of zero trust as a central theme in the endpoint security space. And we've already seen this happen among network security providers, but now we expect many of the endpoint security suite vendors to do the same. Overall, zero trust is one of the hot topics in the security ecosystem today, and it's and just given the recent increase in home workers and their personal devices, being used for work, right, such as mobile devices and IoT devices, having the capacity to isolate, secure, and control really any device in the network has never been more critical. And while many of the network access control solutions are in part responsible for carrying out this task, there is space for the endpoint security suite vendors to help carry the organization's zero trust strategy forward, right? And based on the roadmaps of several large vendors in the space, new forms of risk identification and its overall alignment with policy-based isolation will very likely find its way into many of their products by the end of this year. So let's dive into this a bit more.